Hello, folks, and welcome to our 2025 FAMU preseason preview video. I'm JPeeps. Hope you guys have enjoyed, all of our preseason preview videos, our NFL preseason preview videos and everything such as that. And today, again, talking about FAMU 2025 schedule, what games look like wins, what games look like losses, players to watch, a couple other things such as that. So, as always, as you know, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Be sure to leave a comment. Of course, a couple other things. Pre-countdown to kickoff will be back again this year as well too. We're going to run the intro for you for that here in a few seconds before we get into the schedule. Going to talk about, of course, the outlook of what the schedule brings, as well as the offensive numbers from last season and how do they need to improve, as well as the defensive numbers from last year and how those definitely need to improve as well. So without further ado, get back, get comfy. Going to roll the intro. Let's go. All right. Yeah. And that's the new intro for this year. All right. So that being said, looking at the outlook for the 2025 schedule, of course, last year, FAMU went 7-5, 5-3. Not what you want. But again, we expect improvement. I expect improvement. I think there will be improvement this season. 8 of 12 games are in the state of Florida, 2 classic games. FAMU returns to the Orange Blossom Classic, your first matchup against Alcorn since 1987. And it's on homecoming, so that'll be exciting. And, of course, the 80th meeting against Bethune-Cookman this year, the Florida Classic as well. So there's a lot to be excited about for this season. As far as the offense goes, last season, SWAC total offense, they were 3rd, which is interesting, but not at the same time. FCS pass offensive rank, they were 26th, just outside the top 25. And then, of course, FCS rush defense or offense rank, they were 70th, which that needs to drastically improve this season in order for this team to have success. And, you look around and, like championship teams, look at Philadelphia, look at Ohio State from a season ago, look at FAMU when they won the 2023 Celebration Bowl. Championship teams, they run the ball well, and they play elite defense. And you have to do both of those in order to get back to that in 2025. You have to. And speaking of defense, FAMU's 2024 defensive numbers, 50th in the FCS total defensive ranking. Got to improve. FCS run defense rank, 83rd. Got to improve there. Pass defense rank, 35th. Defensive TDs ranked 66th, third down conversion percentage 35th. Got to improve there as a defense in total. And I think, bringing in Kenwick Thompson from UAB, he's going to be tasked with, improving this defense from top to bottom and making them better. So, again, championship teams play good defense. They play elite defense. All right. So, and with that, I guess we can go ahead and get into the schedule now. So, first one up to bat. August 30th, Orange Blossom Classic against Howard. Howard was 4-8 last year, 1-4 in the MEAC. They return Noah Miles, running back Eden James, Braylon Smith, Judah McGimsey. They lost Kenny Gallup Jr. They lost Darius Fox, Jalen Tolbert, Casey Hawthorne, and running back Jared Hunter. And then They brought in, of course, Andre Cooper Jr., Bryce Leos, and then Keon Mitchell, who comes in from San Diego State. Andre Cooper comes in from Robert Morris. And for this one, I think the elements play a huge factor. The more in shape team, the more prepared team is going to have success here. So I think FAMU wins this one. I think FAMU starts out 1-0. And, that's the jolt of energy you need to open up the slate. That's a good feeling you want to have. So right out the gate, 1-0. And then going to go play against Florida Atlantic the same week. So you're going back to South Florida again. And you're going to play a Florida Atlantic team September 6th, whose last year the record was 3-9. Tom Herman got fired, which his fall off it needs to be studied. That's crazy. They also lost Amari Hayes, running back Zuberi Mobley, and tight end Wyatt Sullivan. They have returning linebackers Jackson Ambush, linebacker Jared Jules, quarterback Caden Belcamp, and they did hire Zach Kitley as their head coach. So some new energy being brought in to Florida Atlantic. We'll see what it leads to this year. Look, I think FAMU can compete in this game. I think they can. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be honest, I think this is where you lose your first game. So I think that's an L. I think you lose to Florida Atlantic out of the gate. So, you're 1-1 at this point. Nothing to really say like, oh my gosh, the sky's falling. But I think you'll be okay. So, 1-1 at this point going into your home opener against Albany State. I think you're still in a good position. So, and with Albany State. So September 13th, Albany State home opener. Last year, Albany State was 7-6, 3-5 in the SIAC. Quinn Gray has his returning quarterback in Isaiah Knowles, offensive lineman Noah Stovall, defensive lineman Isaiah Morrison, and defensive back Jalen Glaze. They lost cornerbacks coach Orlando McKinley, who comes back to FAMU, actually. And they added defensive back Ja'Cory White. This one here as well, again, Quinn Gray's going to have these guys ready to play. It's going to be a competitive game. But at the same time, too, I think FAMU wins. I think FAMU kind of pulls away here. It'll be probably late in the game, but I think FAMU wins. So at that point now, you're 2-1 through the first 3 weeks of the season, feeling pretty good about yourself and gearing up for conference play. And with conference play, after this, you get a bye week and then the chance to get ready for conference play. So coming out of the bye week, of course, now you play September 27th, Alabama State. Ooh, too soon. But, yeah, I think FAMU beats Alabama State as well. But last year, Alabama State 7-5, 5-3. They return Andrew Body, Cameron Smith, Keon Lewis. They lost their defensive coordinator, Ryan Lewis, to UAB. They lost Rico Dozier, Amon Scarborough, and defensive lineman Traquan Thomas. They added running back Aiden Moody. And again, I think they win this. That was a little premature on my part, but I do think that they win this one. It'll be tough for about a half, but, for some reason, it's just FAMU at home. I like FAMU's chances. And, Andrew Body returns, but I have my questions as well, too, about if Andrew Body can stay healthy. You can't make the club in the tub. Sorry. But it is what it is. And with that, now you fast forward to Mississippi Valley, October 4th in Atlanta. By the way, this is a Valley home game. This is not a FAMU home game. I don't know why they decided to play it like this, but, that's interesting that they decided to do that. But nevertheless, so, last year, Mississippi Valley, 1-11, 1-7 in the conference. They returned to Fabian Fant, defensive back Kobe Bird. They lost wide receiver Nathan Rambert to Jackson State, and also they lost defensive lineman Dante Reed, and they lost Kenwick Wade for reasons that can't be discussed. But at the same time, too, they brought in Terrell Buckley. They brought in offensive coordinator Sam Parker, who was a three-time D2 national champion. and Brandon Nunez from New Mexico State. Look, you know, what happened last year happened last year. I think, FAMU came in, didn't take this team seriously, but at the same time, too, Valley was mourning the loss of one of their teammates, played inspired football, came ready to play. Hats off to them. They won. And I think at the same time, too, along with losing the home winning streak, this game was a little bit of an eye opener for a lot of people. And I think this was the game where, Colsey said, hey, you know what we're doing is not working. We got to make changes on the staff. And I think after this game, it led to the promotion of Henry Burris, who's now the new OC. And, I like what he was able to do. So, when you get to Atlanta and play Valley, I do think you beat Valley. I do like the Terrell Buckley hire and the Sam Parker addition as well. I think Valley can build off of that and get better. I do expect Valley to slowly improve and not be an easy out for a lot of people. But again, any given Sunday, well, any given Saturday in this case, but any given day, you can be beat, but you got to come to play if you're going to play Valley, and it's on a big stage in Atlanta. So again, I think you beat Valley. And I think at that point, you're 4-1, 2-0 in the conference, and you're going back home again to play an old MEAC foe in North Carolina Central. So October 11th, North Carolina Central comes in. Trey Oliver's squad last year, 8-3, 4-1 in the conference or over in the MEAC. They return Walker Harris and Max Urian. They also return Chris Mosley, Markel Quick, and Albert Reid. They lost, Coach Kevin Maurice and offensive line coach Cedric Williams. They lost tight end Miles Campbell as well, too. They added Joshua Crabtree and defensive back Anthony Fisher. So, I think this game's going to be, one of those physical knockdown, drag out type of games. I do think that, it's going to resemble that old MEAC style. But at the same time, too, I do think FAMU comes away victorious here as well. So I think coming out of this game, you're 5-1 and 2-0 in your conference. And that takes you into homecoming with a lot of momentum. And up next, of course, that brings Alcorn State. First meeting since '87. So this will be on homecoming here. And, this will be a fun one. Yeah. So 6-6 last year for Alcorn State, 5-3 in the SWAC last year. They returned Jacorian Sewell, defensive lineman Gideon Sportsville. They lost quarterback Christopher Martin and defensive back Zelly Aldridge Jr. and defensive lineman Malachi Bailey. They added linebacker Tobias Hinton, Ja'Cory Matthews from Florida International, and linebacker Ricky Nichols. Also, FAMU doesn't lose homecoming. I think FAMU comes out motivated here, realizing that, right now you're in the meat and potatoes of the schedule, or really in the middle of the meat and potatoes of your schedule, because that Alabama State all the way to Jackson State game is a steady grind. And if you can make it through that, I think you deserve this conference crown. But, I do think FAMU wins here as well. So first meeting since '87, I think FAMU wins, and that puts FAMU at 6-1, 3-0 in the conference. And you're looking pretty good at this point. So, that's what, three straight conference wins, a MEAC team sprinkled in there as well, two MEAC teams sprinkled in there, plus Florida Atlantic and Albany State. At this point, you've been pretty battle tested. And then at that point now, it takes you to October 25th. You're going to Baton Rouge to go play Southern. And honestly, this one as well, always a tough one. It's always a tough one. FAMU's always had Southern's numbers since going back to 2019. I can't remember the last time FAMU's lost in Baton Rouge. But, yeah. So Southern a year ago, 8-5, 7-1 in the conference. Because, it's weird. Some of these games don't count, which is odd to me. They return offensive lineman Chris Garcia, defensive end Jacoby Givens, linebacker Vince Sullivan, wide receiver Darren Morris. They lost Kendrick Rhymes, offensive line Courtney Lyles. They brought in Samorian Hughes, Amarian Ashbury. They also brought in Cameron McCoy and wide receiver Malachi Jackson. Again, the defending SWAC West champs last year got beat 24-6 in Bragg. It's always tough when you go to the Bayou and play these guys. It'll be a physical game. March 100s go into this one too. But again, I think the run of success against Southern continues. I think FAMU beats Southern as well. I think that you will be at this point 7-1, 4-0 in the conference, which is a pretty nice mark as you go into November 1st and what I think is really going to be the deciding factor of who's going to win this conference. So without further ado, November 1st, Jackson State comes to town. This one's also going to be a competitive game, I think. So Jackson State a year ago, 12-2, 8-0, won the Celebration Bowl against South Carolina State. They return Jacobian Morgan. They return Joannis Fortillion. They return Travis Terrell Jr. They return Jeremiah Williams and Reed Pullum. They lost, their linebacker coach, Chris Orr. They lost Irv Mulligan, who I thought should have been drafted. Crazy he wasn't. They lost Rico Powers and Fabian McCray, and also Robert McDaniel. But they also brought in a couple other guys. They brought in Nathan Rimbert. They brought in Donario Davenport. They brought in as well Alex Valbuena. And they also brought in, where is he? Had him listed here. Carmelo or Keenan Christian out of San Diego State or USC, I believe. And then Carmelo Jones, who's a linebacker out of Baylor. So, yeah, honestly, I think this one's going to be a physical game. It's going to be a physical game. It's going to be fun. It's going to be rowdy. It's going to be intense. Anything you want to name for it. I mean, since 2021, the winner of this game has basically won the SWAC. And again, I look at this game and a season ago, and, it was an instant classic. All the way to the last 3 minutes, FAMU had the lead. I do blame play calling a little bit in that game. Not going to name names. But, the lack of creativity on offense kind of just left me scratching my head here because, the things that were successful last season just seem to have gotten and were abandoned. You forced 4 turnovers against this Jackson State offense, which was something I don't think anybody else was able to successfully do. So, I mean, that says a lot there. But, this one, and God, I hope I'm wrong about this, but I do think you lose this one to Jackson State. I do. Unfortunately, again, hey, I've been wrong before. If I'm wrong about this, I'll put my foot in my mouth. But I do think you'll lose here, unfortunately. And I think this is where the SWAC is going to be lost. Because, again, you got to clinch that SWAC East if you're going to host and basically punch your ticket to the Celebration Bowl. So, again, November 1st, I think you'll lose. But at the same time, I hope I'm wrong. And that, takes you now to the next week. So November 8th, Arkansas Pine Bluff comes calling. Or not, they don't come calling, but you travel on the road to go play Arkansas Pine Bluff. And last year, Arkansas Pine Bluff 3-9, 2-6 in the conference. They returned Jeremiah Rogers, their kicker, Tri Glimpf. And they also lost wide receiver Javonier Gibson and Micaiah Higgins. They added Garrison Davis and Bryce Robinson and Jordan Jackson and Jordan Richards and defensive lineman Tyler Cole as well. I'm going to be honest. I think FAMU wins this one. FAMU's had success going to Pine Bluff, and Pine Bluff, I think, is going to be at the bottom of the barrel in the SWAC West. So I think you do win that one. And I think you get out of there successfully. No worries. And I think now that takes you to the last or the second to last team, your last road trip on the schedule, Alabama A&M, November 15th, the week before the Classic. New head coach, Coach Maynard's been fired. They lost him. So, yeah, Alabama A&M, November 15th. They went 6-6 last year, 4-4 in the conference. Wide receiver or quarterback Cornelius Brown returns. Duke Miller returns. Demetrius Biombi returns. They lost, again, Cornell Maynard. They lost offensive lineman Carson Benson, who got drafted by Baltimore. So good stuff. And as well, Cortez Andrews at linebacker, they lost him. As I stated earlier, they hired head coach Sam Shade. They brought in defensive back Jeremiah Hudson Davis out of Miles. A lot of Miles guys following Sam Shade. Quarterback J.D. Davis from Western Michigan comes in. Malachi Olgan comes in as well, too. This kind of reminds me of the FAMU South Carolina State game from a season ago, now that I look at this. A lot of D2 guys coming in that can play, blending them with what's already there. So, this game feels a lot like the Prairie View game from last year. To me, it feels like a little bit of a track game because it's coming off of the Jackson State game. It's coming off of the Pine Bluff game where I think you're going to roll Pine Bluff, and that's an easy win, I think. And then you're looking ahead to the Florida Classic. So, you can't lose focus of what's ahead of you, and then you still can't be feeling yourself from what you've accomplished behind you. So, but nevertheless, I think Colsey has the guys ready to play in this one, and I think you do win here. I think you pull it off here, and I think you have success and win. So at this point now, looking back on the schedule, you're 9-2, 6-1, going into the Florida Classic. And, never a dull moment here. You're going to be looking to go for your 5th straight win in the Florida Classic on November 22nd against Raymond Woody and the Cats. If it pulls up at any point, there we go. So, yeah. So last year, Bethune-Cookman, 2-10, 2-6 in the SWAC. They return Adrian Hall Jr., Malachi Huggins, Antoine Watts, linebacker Malik Stinnett. They lost Raymond Woody III. They lost Dennis Palmer, which was a shocker. They lost tight end Thomas Nance and defensive back Terrence Alexander. They added Timmy McClain, which I think that's a good move. I actually do think that's a good move. I do expect Timmy McClain to start and play. For those that don't know, yes, Timmy McClain has basically completed the I-4 corridor mission, basically playing for USF, UCF, and took a brief stint away, played at Arkansas State, I believe it was, and now he's back at Bethune, basically played for all 3 major programs on I-4 outside of Stetson. But I do anticipate him to be the starter at some point this season. They also added Ricky Shaw from Wofford, who's a wide receiver, and defensive end LaJuan Lurie, and wide receiver Javen Dames as well. There's a lot going on there. I think FAMU wins their 5th Florida Classic. I've lost faith in Raymond Woody personally. I don't know if he'll be there in 2026. I think personally, if Bethune's going to get to where they want to go and get back to winning like they previously did in years past, I don't think Raymond Woody's the guy to take them there. I hate to say it and be that guy, but I don't. So I think they'll probably be looking for a new head coach at the end. Maybe even going into this game, they'll probably be looking for somebody. Who knows? But, we'll see. And with that, now, SWAC Championship, December 6th. Let's play the game of, let's say FAMU gets past Jackson State. Let's just say let's say FAMU gets past Jackson State. You're 11-1 going into this game. Who do you play? My money's on either Prairie View or Southern. Simply put. And I do think that you can beat either one at that point. If you're 11-1 going into the SWAC championship, I think you're going to the Celebration Bowl. You've played a meat grinder of a schedule. Early bye week, still grinded it out. Got a little bit of a break there because of, yes, Army Navy weekend. But I think at that point, I think you're punching your ticket to the Celebration Bowl. Oh, didn't take that down. Whoopsies. But yeah. Now, let's say Celebration Bowl, December 13th. If you get there, I know South Carolina State, I believe I saw, was favored to win the conference. But, I mean, of course, Mike Vick comes into the conference as well. You have North Carolina Central there. You know, back in May, I thought for sure Michael Vick and company are winning this, or winning the MEAC. Not so sure anymore. Because I feel like Trey Oliver is going to have a say in that, not wanting to see a former NFL player just come in his first year and win the MEAC. So, and I do think South Carolina State's going to have a say in it as well. So I don't know. I think whoever comes out on top between South Carolina State, North Carolina Central, and Norfolk, I think will be in the Celebration Bowl. So it'll be a tough game. It'll be a battle. I do think if FAMU can get there, FAMU wins. But again, the way I predicted it out, I do think that right now Jackson State's going back. I do. Unfortunate to say. I hope I'm wrong. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the question part. So, what will Henry Burris bring to the table as far as, being named the new OC this season? Quite frankly, again, you look back at these numbers, you got to build off of this. You got to aim to be first in SWAC and total offense if you're Henry Burris. You got to improve upon being 26th passing the ball. You got to majorly improve upon being the 70th ranked rush offense in the FCS. You have to, quite frankly. And I think he will. If you look back on it, FAMU averaged 21 points per game up until that switch came. And, once you saw the switch come, FAMU was averaging 34.5, which is a massive turnaround. And you saw the success FAMU was having with blocking assignments, running the ball effectively in the Florida Classic. And you saw it again in the Alabama A&M game last season. And quite frankly, when you look at the numbers, 8 rushing touchdowns, which tied for the third fewest in the FCS in 2024 last year. Didn't score a single rushing TD until November. 1 against Texas Southern on homecoming. 1 against Mississippi Valley in a loss. 4 of them in the Florida Classic, which pulled you to victory. 2 of them against Alabama A&M. Again, when you score multiple touchdowns on the ground, couple that in with passing the ball as well too, which I think Coach Burris will do, because I think he brings a creative element to this offense. And I would like to see play action come back and be reinstalled into this offense. FAMU did not run, that I can recall, an effective play action play at all last season. So that needs to be added back into the fold too. And I believe in Coach Burris. I think he will. So again, championship teams win with quality defense and consistently running the football. The proof is in the pudding. You saw the points per game go up when this team effectively ran the ball. 6 TDs in the last 2 weeks of the season, because the Alabama A&M game had to be a makeup game because of the hurricanes. Both hurricanes that swept through the state. All right. Who steps up as the top targets with Jamari Gassett gone? Quite frankly, you got a couple of them. You got Ace Cobb, you got Jalen Rogers, you got Goldie Lawrence, you got Kanari Wilcher, you got Jordan Parker. 2 of those guys are new transfers coming in. Kanari Wilcher comes from Illinois. Jordan Parker comes from Western Michigan. And then also, too, you got the freshman Moses White, who comes in from Tampa, from Hillsborough High School here. So I think you're looking at a couple guys you can turn to as far as playmakers that you can get the ball to. Will FAMU's rushing attack find a pulse in 2025? As I stated already, you have to. You can't be 70th in rushing. And I think they will. I think they'll find much greater success again because you found something there at the end of the season. So, having Thad Franklin, having Bo Somerset, who I hope got faster in the offseason, having Jamal Haley, who is the Western Michigan transfer as well, who, quite frankly, if you look at his tape, he's a home run hitter. That's a three-headed monster right there that I think brings new success. And then, of course, the one right here, of course, for offense as well before we switch to defense. The question on everybody's mind, who starts at quarterback? Is it R.J. Johnson, Tyler Jefferson, Jet Petty, or somebody else? Quite frankly, me personally, I think it's Jet Petty. I'm not giving anything away there. I just personally, I think it's Jet Petty. The numbers to me kind of just, it points to him. Plus the fact too, Coles, he said he hopes to name a starting quarterback sooner rather than later. Like last year, he hopes to name one sooner this offseason into fall camp. And I think he will. And I think it's Jet Petty, me personally. That's not me in talking circles or anything like that. That's just my observation. I think Jet's the guy. Now, who's the backup? Who knows? Maybe it's R.J. Johnson. Maybe it's Tyler Jefferson. I think there's a hardcore battle going on there for quarterback too. But nevertheless, now, onto the defense, how does the Dark Cloud defense, or how does this defense regain its vaunted Dark Cloud defense status? Because quite frankly, me personally, I'm like, I can't call them the Dark Cloud defense until they start playing like it again. And looking at those numbers, you can't call them the Dark Cloud defense. You can't. You got to show that you are a top 5 defense in multiple statistics first. But I think you get back to that by, limiting the amount of passes that are completed against you. So improve your FCS pass defense, stuffing the run, not letting guys fall forward for an extra 3 to 4 yards after contact, playing pursuit defense really well, gang tackling, wrapping up, bringing your arms, being effective, shooting gaps, being where you're supposed to be, winning the point of attack. I think all of those factor in. And if you do that, I think, yes, you can go back to being that vaunted defense you once were. Because last year, you had moments, but it has to improve. What can we expect from the secondary that gave up too many deep shots? Again, you got to improve on your FCS pass defense. Can't be 35th. Can't be 66th in defensive touchdowns. You got to lower those numbers. Can't be 50th in FCS total defense. So, I think you have to improve in a lot of those areas in order to not be a secondary that gave up so many deep shots. And I think they will. Now, as far as players to watch goes, of course, this season offensively, I think it's Jet Petty, of course. At running back, Thad Franklin. At wide receiver, I'm looking at Jalen Rogers as another guy who I thought was going to break out last year and be effective. As well, too, I'm also looking at Ashton Grable along the offensive line and the tight end Miles Campbell out of North Carolina Central, who was also previously at Tennessee. So I'm expecting big things out of all those guys on the offensive side. Defensively, I'm looking at Brian Norris Jr. and Justin Cross and Nayron all in the middle at linebacker. I think, Brian Norris I thought would have been a huge help defensively to this unit up until he had an injury in fall camp. In the secondary, of course, Dalen Ditson is someone I'm looking at, as well as also too linebacker Aubrey Smith. And then, of course, on the defensive line, Davian Westmoreland and Cameron Donald. two guys on the defensive line I'm looking at to have a strong season this year as well. As well, too, this defense was 5th defensively in the SWAC last year. Got to improve upon that. So, I'm looking forward to seeing what Coach, Kenwick Thompson can do as far as improving this defense. And I think he will get it turned around. And then on special teams, of course, Gunnar Trout and Daniel Porto, who's a transfer out of Holy Cross, 2 guys that I'm expecting to be able to flip the field and play a huge role as far as special teams goes. And one other thing before we do wrap it up, the addition of Coach Maurice Sims from Colorado coming to FAMU, previously worked at Georgia under, Scott Cochran, who I think is a strength and conditioning guru and probably one of the best in the business. Doesn't coach anymore, but is one of the best in the business. I think his addition is going to prove to be a huge part of FAMU's success this season, because, part of the battle is strength and conditioning in the offseason. It is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I do like that hire as well. I thought Colsey, has had a good offseason so far as bringing in, coaches that are going to do the right thing and improve upon the foundation that's been laid, even though, it was a step back. One other thing too, Willie Simmons was 6-5 in his first season. Colsey 7-5. The arrow, you can only go up from here. You can only go up. It can only get better. So I think, the senior guys buy into the system, and I think they have. I think this team will have success. And with that, folks, I guess, that's all we got today. So in closing, of course, and I'll share it before we get out of here. My prediction for this team, 10-2, 7-1 for the year. I think the team's ceiling is definitely 13-1. Well, I should say 8-0, but 9-0 if you include the SWAC championship, if they can get that far. But I do think the floor for this team is 8-4 and 6-2. So I think if we get a little bit of a replay of what happened last year, this year, I do think that this team, as far as those 4 losses goes, I think the 4 losses are against Florida Atlantic. I think the second one's Central. I think the other one is Jackson State. And I do think the upset one and the shocking one there is Alabama A&M. And I think those are the 4 losses that this team could sustain. But again, that's the floor. But again, prediction 10-2, ceiling 13-1, floor 8-4. And with that, that's all we got. So, thank you so much for watching, of course. Again, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Be sure to leave a comment underneath this video as well, too. Countdown to kickoff. We'll be back August 30th in Miami, Saturday morning. So be sure to tune in and check in for that. And as always, folks, as you know, stay safe, stay blessed. We will see you on the next video or the Running Gun Podcast.